Hello everyone, and welcome to my brand new 2020 Planetside 2 Performance Guide. This will include a much more updated guide from my previous 2016 Performance Guide and should help many of you improve your FPS and visual fidelity. Let's begin. First things first, let's discuss Planetside 2. The game now runs on DirectX 11 versus DirectX 9, which just so happens to be what my last guide was based off of. Many things have changed. There are new particle systems in place that allow smoke grenades to actually function properly. There's no real way to avert smoke grenades, so that is something we will try to mitigate as much as possible. Anti-aliasing is another major issue this guide will help improve upon. The built-in Planetside 2 anti-aliasing settings are not able to be altered either through in-game options or documents, so we will use another option located in the NVIDIA Control Panel to help sharpen the game and make body outlines look crisp and clean. Speaking of the NVIDIA Control Panel, let's begin there first. There are many options located in the control panel that must be changed, so we will go down the list one by one. As of this video, the current driver being used is 445.87, so if down the line you see things that have changed, let me know and I will amend this video. To open the NVIDIA Control Panel, you can right-click on your desktop and select NVIDIA Control Panel. Once the window is opened, you will see many different options. Our area of focus will be inside of Manage 3D Settings. Once you click that tab, you will see two additional tabs open, Global Settings and Program Settings. Because this is Planetside 2 specific, we will head over to the Program Settings tab. Once inside of there, you will want to select your Planetside 2 EXE from the program list. Once we are all set up, we can begin tampering with our control panel. Our first feature we will adjust will be image sharpening. We'll be setting it to a sharpen of 0.20 and ignore film grain to 1.00. This helps us tremendously with the horrid anti-aliasing this game has. Our next feature will be, and excuse the way I say it, anisotropic filtering. We'll be setting this to off. Once those two features are updated, we will scroll down the list a little bit until you see the feature labeled low latency mode. We will be setting this to Ultra. You can read more into what this does inside the control panel if interested, but in reality, it helps improve the responsiveness of the game in general, either by aiming or actions done by the player, in my eyes. Once done, you can move on to the multi-framed sampled anti-aliasing. We will be setting this to off. Next is OpenGL Rendering GPU. We will be setting this to auto select, and then next will be power management, which we will set to prefer maximum performance. Next up on our features list will be texture filtering alterations. Anisotropic sample optimizations will be set to on, negative LOD bias will be set to allow, quality will be set to high performance, and trilinear optimization will be set to on. To round off the NVIDIA Control Panel, we will adjust threaded optimization to on and vertical sync to off. Once these settings are all set and applied, go ahead and save your changes, and we will move on to the file changes for the in-game settings. In order to access the next set of settings we will be adjusting, you will want to locate where your Planetside 2 game is stored. I personally use Steam, so follow the procedure I'm about to list. Go to your Steam folder on your computer, scroll down to Steam Apps, and then you're going to click the Common folder, and then you're going to go to Planetside 2 folder. Once in there, you'll want to scroll all the way down to the configuration setting labeled User Options. And once you get there, open it up in a notepad. Keep in mind you must have the game launched at least once before this file appears in the Planetside 2 folder. There are many settings located in here, and it can get very overwhelming the more you look into it. So let's go one at a time. For reference and ease of use, I've included a paste bin including the changes made from the categories display to controls. You could easily copy and paste to replace what already exists in your current configuration file. I'd highly recommend you do that over actually listening into the settings I'm about to change. It gets rid of the confusion. But I also go more in depth in the settings and what they do in this category. So, for the display category, we'll be setting the mode to full screen mode to full screen refresh to 0, and your width and height will be set to the monitor resolution specs, which mine is 1920 by 1080. And render quality should be set to 1.0000. I'm not too worried about windowed width and height, as we will not be running this game in windowed. Our next category is labeled rendering. This is the most important category we will be altering in this video. So to begin, smoothing should be set to 0, graphics quality should be set to 1, texture quality should be set to 0, and shadow quality should be set to 0. To explain how this game works in conjunction with these files, it's important to note that 0 sometimes equals max on a lot of settings, but shadows being set to 0 turns off shadows. Shadows are some of the most taxing settings in the game, and by default turning this off doesn't make the game look much worse, and it actually nets you quite a bit of frames. So don't just go into this file thinking that if you set everything to 0, everything will be maxed out, because on some settings 0 is max, and in other settings 0 actually turns it off completely. Continuing down the list, we have render distance, which I prefer to be set to 150, but many like to fly and see further, so 500 to 1000 aren't bad numbers either. 150 nets you the most performance from my testing. This is personal preference. I also prefer to set gamma to 0.75, as I like to see at all times of the game clock, but again, this is personal preference. And maximum performance is also dependent on what your monitor's refresh rate is. Mine is currently 144 Hz, so I prefer to bump my max FPS up to 165, which removes most of the screen tearing and stuttering. If you have a 60 Hz monitor, I'd recommend running between 80 and 85 as a cap to see where that takes you, but it should net you the same results as me. To continue on, we will set use LOD 0A to 0, overall quality to -1, lighting quality to -1, effects quality to -1, and terrain quality to 1. For floor quality, we will set this to 4. Model quality will be set to 1. When it comes to field of view, it's all dependent on what you prefer using. My friend Leroy has recently posted a new video all about sensitivity and has included a feature regarding field of view. Please check out that video linked in the description to see how field of view messes with in-game sensitivity and how you visually see models of enemy players. To sum it up briefly, 65 FOV grants much noticeable recoil, but also allows you to see more of enemies' heads and models than at 80 FOV. 80 FOV grants much less noticeable recoil, but also makes enemy models look further away, but it looks like your game's also running faster. So really, it's personal preference what you prefer, but again, please go check out that video for more information regarding field of views. The next couple of settings are very important. Particles are difficult to work with in Planetside 2. From lots of testing, much of the player base has come up with a nice set of particle settings that makes the game continue looking great without being all in your face with effects. We will set particle LOD to 3, particle distance scale to 0.0, effect LOD to 0, and effects distance scale to 0. As you can see in the videos playing in the background, the game still looks fantastic and doesn't have an overbearing amount of particles that ruin the visual experience. To round off this category of settings, we will set fog shadows enabled to 0, motion blur to 0, VSync to 0, bloom enabled to 0, use aspect FOV to 0, AO to 0, use fences to 1, and GPU physics to 0. Once you have done all of what's been said, go ahead and save that. Now, I prefer leaving this off of read-only in case I have to make some adjustments in-game like render distance. However, if you don't want to risk messing with anything of what you've done here, I would save this file, head over to the user options properties, and set it to read-only. Then there is no chance of in-game settings messing with the actual INI you have set. What will happen is when you go into game and you change render distance for that session, right, when you log off and you come back, it'll be set back to what you actually did in this configuration file. And once you've gone ahead and done all this, go ahead and open the game. I hope you find that the game has improved both visually and performance-wise. Now get out there and fight. As a quick add-on, I would like to add that my current rig is an i7-9700K at 5 GHz across all cores, a GTX 2070 Super, 16 GB at 3200 MHz DDR4 RAM, and is running off of an SSD, an NVMe specifically. In relation to performance, components are just as important. Believe it or not, RAM speeds and tightened timings greatly increase performance as well as overclocking your CPU. A good way of getting rid of stuttering is to also install Planetside 2 on an SSD. And if you have a struggling CPU, there are minor changes you could do in the user options.ini, such as changing your render quality to 1.41. What this does is pretty much takes a lot of the compression load off of the CPU and puts it on the GPU. So if you have a good GPU and a kind of crappy CPU, you could always try that option as well. But in this guide, this is a more general guide for every single rig. Thank you for watching this video. Please share your comments down below, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you.